Today I am back at my local cemetery because I had a request through on Find a Grave to find a location for someone, which I've dealt with more by chance than anything because there wasn't a grave or a plot number, and I got lucky in the end and happened to walk past him. I've done this today because we've had terrible weather lately. It's just been driving rain. I haven't really been out at all in recent days because the rain has been relentless. So I've taken the opportunity to get out today because I think the rest of the week, it's Monday now, the rest of the week it's also just going to keep on raining. So I've decided to come out today when it's not raining, obviously. I'm hoping that this week is going to be a brighter week. My last upload was pretty depressing and stressful, and the last couple of weeks have been horrible actually, because I'm really worried about what's going to happen with the rent. I'm still waiting to hear about that, so no news on that front. But I have a slightly more buoyant week this week. On Wednesday I'm going off to see my best friend, who I don't get to see very often because it's a couple of hours drive away and I can't afford to spend the petrol on things that aren't essential. So I'm afraid socialising is no longer essential. But I haven't seen her since just before Christmas, and I didn't see her at all last year apart from that. So we are arranging to meet up. I'm going over to hers for the day. And on Friday you might remember a couple of months ago I was talking about doing medical tests and volunteering for medical tests for money, and that, you know, one or two of those a year could solve all my financial problems. And I decided I wasn't going to do it anymore because of something that I'd done recently, which reminded me that I can't get any blood out of my arms. The veins in my arms have just disappeared as I've got older. But they kept sending me new things coming up, and so I've called them and I had a chat with them. They said, well, give it another go and we'll see. So they've put me on to one. It's just the screening. I've never passed a screening yet. I don't quite fit. They have very, very tight parameters for when they're doing healthy people studies with initial drugs. So I always tend to fall just outside the parameters. But at least you get paid to go along and do it. It's about £75 just to go and do the screening. So, you know, it's a few quid better off even if I don't get the study which would pay £2,500 for a 9-day study. It's good money, really good money, but I'm not going to get it because I never do. But I'm going to go along, and then if they struggle this week with the bloods, I'll just say, look, take me off the list. There's no point in me trying this anymore. So that's a couple of things going on. Also, last week I did apply for a part-time job. I can't remember if I mentioned it on the last thing. I'm not going to go into too many details because I haven't got the job yet, so it's almost pointless discussing it. But I filled out, I applied. It wasn't a formal application, it was just I dropped them a line. They sent me a questionnaire which I filled out, which they're happy with, and they came back and asked me for references, which I've now done. And the references, I've had to use 2 friends because I don't have an employer to use as a reference, but they didn't mind that. And so I have done those, or should I say they've done those. They've both messaged me back and said that the references have been sent off, so I'm just waiting to hear for the interview now, which I think is going to be fairly informal because it's a reasonably informal job. It will be part-time. If I get it, it will fill the money gap that I have at the moment, which at the moment for this year is about £3,500, I think. But that doesn't include any rent increases, which I have no idea about right now. So it's just all swings and roundabouts. I should hear very soon about the rent. And I really hope that I get an interview for this job this week, which will at least, I mean, even if the rent doesn't go up, I still need the job, but it'll add to my week, and it'll still be part-time, which means I still get to do all the other things that I'm already doing. I feel like I have hit an income ceiling with all the other things that I do. I don't think I'm going to be able to get any more out of savings interest. With the surveys, I feel like there is only so much I can do. I can apply for everything, but I'm not eligible for a lot of surveys because of my circumstances. You know, they want to know about how many holidays you go on every year and when you're next buying an electric car and things, all things that I'm just not going to do. So I feel like I've reached kind of the limit on the combination of surveys and market research that I can get. It's an alright amount of money for what it is, and of course it does mean that I can fit it in. Business is still down for my actual business. I'm running at only a third of last year's income. That's how bad it's got. It's just not a good time to be a small business. People are prioritising things that are important, and I was chatting to my parents about this and said, you know, people just aren't buying stuff. I'm 2/3 down on my income this year, and my dad was like, well, just make them buy stuff. I said, you can't do that. For a start, it's not ethical, and you can't force people to buy stuff they don't need just for my pocket. You know, people are worrying about the same things as me. They're worried about their rent, they're worried about putting food on the table, clothing their kids, all that sort of thing. So, and jobs, probably lots of people are still losing their jobs or trying to find jobs, I should imagine. So no, you can't force people to buy things that aren't necessities, and nothing that I make is a necessity. Everything is a luxury. I make clothes and jewellery and homeware, and there are still people buying. There are a few. It's not massive, but you know, July has been a better month. I have sold a few things and made a few things and got a commission. So it's not completely dead, but it's not going to be anywhere near as good as last year. As I say, we're looking at only a third of last year's income. And that, coupled with losing the working tax credits next month, which is going to lose me best part of, I don't know, about £1,300 I think I will lose. That, coupled with the £1,000 I'm going to lose or so on the business, and with the rent going up, and of course everything else has been up, has just created a bigger deficit between my breaking even and not breaking even. So, as I said, I'm about £3,500 short, and even if I get this part-time job, that's not going to fill the gap. But if I've got the job, then I can fill whatever gap is left with savings that I still have for emergencies like this, and just increase the work hours. And at least I will know where I'm going to be for the next year. I will know where I'm living. I've covered for a worst case scenario, what I think would be a worst case scenario for rent in this area. I've added an extra £200 a month to my rent budget as a worst case situation. And I'm hoping to God it's not like that, because that's just going to be horrific and will, I suspect, mean that this will be my last year in the flat. But again, until I get my rental tenancy renewal through, I don't really know what I'm working with. So that's it, really. So this is me in a very pleasant, very quiet graveyard. I love this cemetery. Not many people come here. It's well looked after. It's surrounded by nature reserve, so you get lots of nature here. And the names are so interesting. I just love looking at all these people. And it's a reminder of the mortality of humans. And I don't mind that. It is what it is, you know. You're born, you live, you die. That's that's the nature of it being an organic thing. Is that you will come into being, and then you will live, and then you will die at some point. It's the way it is. But yeah, just looking at some of these. There's obviously been some anniversaries because fresh flowers have appeared on a bunch of graves that normally you wouldn't see anything on, so it must be anniversaries or birthdays. But I think I'm going to head back now. I feel like actually, let's walk. I like to just wander. I'm always coming across interesting names that I haven't seen before. First name of Sambal. Some really unusual names. Irvine. This must be the unusual first name section. These are the graves of the 1910s and 1920s by the looks of it. But of course it's hard to spot everybody because people will end up in graves that have come from earlier times as well. So the chap I was looking for wasn't in the 1985 section, which is where I started because I was looking for someone without a plot number. He turned out to be in the 1950s because he was in the grave of people who died years before. All fine. I've just got lucky with that one. But as you become more familiar with your local cemetery or your local graveyard, you start to work out where people are, and sometimes you might get a request through and you'll think, I recognise that surname, where have I seen that? And it makes it easier to locate them. Getting distracted by all the names. I don't often walk this section. Anyway, so that's where things are at the moment. It's a slightly more buoyant week. Things to keep me occupied rather than me just ruminating over rent and things. Fingers crossed. This week will be the good week. Hopefully I'll get the interview for this job, which will fit in very nicely. But maybe it's too good to be true. I'm doing everything I can to avoid having to go back to office work. I've been looking at, well, there aren't any part-time jobs for secretarial. It's going to be full-time and it's going to be going back into the city, and nah. I'd be pretty desperate to want that, because I can't imagine ever doing that again. It's just hideous. Anyway, so fingers crossed, and we'll see how the rest of the week goes. Right, well, it's a full week since my last update. I've just come back from doing the initial screening for the medical trial, which didn't go that badly actually. They managed to get blood out of my veins, although it wasn't that straightforward. So we'll wait and see what happens. I should know by the end of the week whether or not I've got to the next stage, and we'll take it from there. I'm not holding out much hope. I've never passed a screening before, for all the reasons I've explained in previous videos. Last week I haven't had that much to report on really. I went to see my best friend on the Wednesday, which was great. It was really nice to do something different. Get out of my own headspace is always a good thing. And I also had confirmation that I'm going forward for interview for this part-time job. So I'm just waiting to hear when that interview should be, sometime this week or next week, depending on their availability. And it's quite an informal thing. They come to me, it's a half-hour informal interview. So I'm not worried about that. It's just then whether I get it. And of course, with the screening, if I get that, then that's good money, but we'll see what happens. Apart from that, things have been quite quiet. Oh, I ended up having a chat with my neighbours. I was chatting with one neighbour, who's the guy who lives next to me, who's also was self-employed, and we were talking about rent and stuff like that. And then the neighbour from underneath me came outside and kind of overheard us talking about rent, and he said they've just had their tenancy renewed last week, and it's only gone up £25 a month. Which, if that's the same for all flats in our block, which it should be, or at least it should be similar to bring us into line, then I'm not going to worry about the rent. If it's only £25 or £50 more a month, I can do that regardless of what happens with A, the job, and B, the medical study, because it'll give me the breathing space to just keep looking for work and find the right thing, or find the extra income. I was worried about it going up £200 or £300 in one hit, which wouldn't have been doable. So I've kind of relaxed a little bit over the last few days, because I feel like the rent thing isn't going to be terrible. I mean, obviously it's going to go up. I know it's going to go up, but if it doesn't go up much, that's not too bad. So I feel a little bit more relaxed. So that's really the only update. I don't really have anything else to say at the moment. Everything's pretty quiet. I suppose the next update will be whether or not I've had the interview for the job this week, and whether or not I hear back about the medical study. If I don't hear back from them at all this week, that means I've got through to the next stage. So I'm expecting a phone call. We'll see how we get on. That's all there really is for now.